Pastor Adrian Johnson, and all of the elders and members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church here at St. Andrew's Memorial. I greet you well and thank you very much for affording us this opportunity to worship with you this morning. It is a very significant morning for us, but before I get into that, I want to also acknowledge my colleagues who are here with me. We have with us Lisa Hanna, Member of Parliament for South East St. Anne, Horace Daly, who is the acting chairman of the People's National Party. We have Senator Gabriella Morris, and we have Eugene Kelly, Vice President-elect. We have been afforded the opportunity to have a small group here, and we thank you very much. And we appreciate the fact that the service is being streamed live, so our comrades and friends can participate online. We are celebrating the 83rd anniversary of the People's National Party at an extraordinarily challenging time in the history of the world, and indeed Jamaica. For over a year and a half now, the COVID pandemic has had mankind in its grip, forcing us to social distance, avoid gatherings, endure lockdowns, wear masks, and generally have and live a much changed and often more isolated life. Millions of people across the world have passed, including over 1,700 of our fellow countrymen here in Jamaica. And on top of that, there have been millions of so-called excess deaths, where persons have passed because health facilities have had to be refocused on treating COVID patients, leaving many people with other conditions unable to get the medical care they need. Economies have been ravaged, especially those like ours with a high dependence on tourism and travel and associated industries. Hence, we are having this anniversary service with only 5 of our senior members of the party enabled to be in church and attend in person. Fortunately, technology allows participation via live streaming on the internet, so that the only constraints on numbers being able to participate this morning is access to a device and internet connectivity. And we thank God for that possibility. For us in the People's National Party, we are worshiping today at a difficult juncture in our 83-year history. We have lost 2 successive general elections in 2016 and 2020. In the House of Representatives, we only have 14 seats out of 63, which is less than a quarter of the seats. We have changed leaders in the party twice in just 4 years and endured 2 presidential contests in that period. And internal issues have continued to distract us. But fortunately, the party, built by Norman Washington Manley and the other founders, is a very resilient institution. We have overcome many difficult challenges during our 83 years. From the outset, the PNP lost the first 2 general elections that it contested and did not achieve state power and being in government for 17 years after it was formed. 3 years before the party first swept to power in 1955, the party went through a wrenching process, having to expel the so-called 4 H's, who were 4 of its dynamic, albeit radical, young leaders. In 1961, after 6 years of highly successful government, achieving one of the fastest growing economies in the world, establishing critical institutions to ready Jamaica for independence, and implementing tremendous social reforms, N.W. Manley called a referendum out of principle on the issue of whether or not Jamaica should join a federation of the West Indies. And he lost that referendum. And closely thereafter, we lost the general election going into independence, with the result that the People's National Party, which had conceptualized the idea of Jamaica as a nation in its own right and led the march for independence, had to take a back seat and watch our competitor party assume state power as Jamaica transitioned to independence in 1962. It took us 10 years to rebuild from that, but by 1972, we were able to offer the Jamaican people the promise that better must come, and a policy platform that would deliver fundamental changes to the structure of Jamaica's colonial society and economy that independence in 1962 had promised but had not yet been achieved. Then in the 1970s, as the government of Michael Manley boldly implemented far-reaching social and economic reforms to make irreversible strides towards decolonizing our country, political violence became a tool, and the government faced destabilization, being on the front line of the Cold War era, leading to the party's worst ever electoral defeat in 1980. This time, it took us 8 years to reflect and rebuild. We showed our resilience once again by reassessing our ideological posture to address the challenges of globalization and the triumph of neoliberalism across the world. So we moved from our principles and objectives of the 1970s to the compass of the 1980s and recognized the role that markets play in economic organization and attracting investment, identifying new modalities for continuing to pursue social and economic transformation in the very different world that was emerging at the end of the 1980s. The result of that reassessment was a tactical shift in policies which led to 18 years of state power, the longest period of continuous government by any party in Jamaica's political history. The fundamental economic reforms of the first part of that era provided Jamaica with the basic architecture of a macroeconomic framework which is fit for purpose in a market-driven economy, and of which there has been bipartisan acceptance ever since. However, that long period in government also brought some amount of complacency when it came to maintaining and upgrading the nuts and bolts of our political organization. It also allowed, or indeed necessitated, our main political competitor to reinvent itself more in our image, adopting on the surface, though we would argue, not in reality, some populist trappings of so-called free public education and free health care, while we allowed our political organization to atrophy. Thus, in the past 14 years, we have been out of office for 10 of them, despite having saved Jamaica from serious economic challenges in our 4 years of government from 2012 to 2016, and having done some heavy lifting to reform and build an economic platform that has opened significant fiscal space and room for policies and policy choices that augur well for Jamaica's recovery when we achieve a post-COVID future. So our party finds itself again at a critical juncture after 83 years of existence. We need to settle down now and focus on doing what needs to be done to make ourselves fit and ready to resume the noble mission for which we were formed 83 years ago. We must reflect deeply and creatively on who we are and reassert what we stand for in this third decade of the 21st century. Moving from those fundamental reflections, we must identify and articulate what we intend to do for the Jamaican people when we next assume the responsibility of government. And as we do that intellectual work, we must also simultaneously rebuild our organization and revitalize our image among the Jamaican people. The good news is that it lies entirely within us and with God's grace to perform these essential tasks. And the work has begun, but there's a lot more work to do. We need not depend on anyone but ourselves and Almighty God to ensure the success of our future. The revitalization of our party to ensure its future relevance and existence as a force of positive transformation in Jamaica requires each of us to make a conscious commitment to Team PNP. It is time to park and let go of squabbles and public tracing based on personality preferences and so on. Our future depends on us coming together as a team and doing the work that needs to be done. United we stand, divided we fall. It's as simple as that. This brief historical survey this morning shows that our party has proved over and over again that it has the resilience and capacity to emerge from the hardest of times, the choppiest of waters, and deliver for Jamaica what the challenges of any particular era require. I am confident with every passing day that more and more of us realize that what is required of us at this time in history is simply to come together. Team PNP is calling each and every one of us to get on board and play our part to take us forward. Now is the time, now is the hour. As our party anthem says, the trumpet has sounded, my countrymen all, awake from your slumber and answer the call. Happy 83rd anniversary, comrades and friends, brothers and sisters. God bless our party and God bless Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.